The flight had just taken off, gliding smoothly above the clouds. When chaos erupted, passengers screamed and flight attendants struggled to maintain control as a group of hijackers stormed the cabin. Their intentions clear and terrifying. Panic spread like wildfire, and no one knew who to trust. Amid the chaos, a quiet man sitting alone in 12B seemed completely unbothered, his gaze steady, almost calculating. He didn't speak, didn't fidget, and at first, no one even noticed him. As the hijackers moved down the aisle, demanding compliance and making threats, the tension in the cabin became unbearable. Families clutched each other, children cried, and even seasoned travelers felt fear clawing at their throats. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, trying to reassure everyone. But the sense of danger was undeniable, but no one realized. What the hijackers certainly didn't expect was that this quiet passenger was no ordinary traveler. Years of training, split-second decision-making, and combat experience were hidden behind that calm exterior. And now, as the plane hung in a perilous balance between fear and survival, the question on everyone's mind was the same: who would make the first move and would it save them all? The quiet passenger's name was Mark Lawson, a former combat pilot who had spent years flying high-risk missions overseas. Most people saw him as just another travel unassuming polite, the type who read a book or stared out the window without drawing attention. But those who had trained with him knew a different side: razor-sharp instincts, the ability to stay calm under extreme pressure, and a mind that constantly calculated risks and opportunities. As the hijackers moved further into the cabin, Mark's eyes flicked over the situation with precision. He noticed patterns: the way they moved, how they communicated, even the small gaps in their attention. Every detail mattered. Behind the mask of ordinary passenger, a storm of strategy was already forming, though no one around him could see it. Meanwhile, the passengers were frozen in fear, whispering to one another, praying silently, and gripping seats for comfort. Flight attendants tried to stay composed, but their anxiety was palpable, adding another layer of tension to the situation. Outside, the plane continued its steady course. Oblivious to the life-or-death struggle unfolding inside, Mark's mind raced through scenarios, options, and outcomes. Every second counted, and he knew that the moment to act could come sooner than anyone expected. But would anyone survive if the wrong move was made? The hijackers didn't know they were being watched, and they certainly had no idea that Mark Lawson's calm exterior hid a lifetime of high-stakes training. He watched them, noting their routines, the way they divided their attention between passengers and their weapons, and the subtle signs of hesitation. Every movement, every whispered command, was a clue. His mind replayed countless scenarios he had trained for, running through outcomes in seconds that would take others hours to consider. Across the aisle, a young mother tried to soothe her crying toddler, her whispered reassurances failing against the tension that gripped the cabin. An elderly man clutched his cane, eyes darting nervously toward the hijackers, silently questioning if they'd survive this nightmare. The plane, once a place of routine travel, had transformed into a cage where fear and uncertainty hung thick in the air. Mark considered his options. If he acted too soon, innocent lives could be in danger. If he waited too long, the hijackers might gain the upper hand. And then there was the captain's voice over the intercom, strained but steady, attempting to keep control while knowing that one wrong word could escalate the situation. Minutes stretched like hours. Tensions inside the cabin rose with every passing heartbeat. Each passenger had a story, each hijacker a motive, and Mark had to weigh them all before making a move. The plane was a ticking clock, and the question lingered: who would break first, and what would the cost be? The cabin was a powder keg ready to ignite. Every passing second made the tension thicker, the fear more suffocating. Mark's eyes never left the hijackers, noting a slight tremor in one of their hands. The way another constantly scanned the aisle as if expecting trouble. He could feel the pressure mounting not just on himself, but on every passenger trapped in this airborne nightmare. The young mother's toddler whimpered again, breaking the silence in sharp, piercing cries. A businessman tried to whisper calming words, but his voice shook. Even the flight attendants moved with measured steps, doing their best to contain the panic that threatened to spill over. From the cockpit, the captain's strained voice urged calm, but the uncertainty in every syllable mirrored the chaos in the cabin. Mark weighed his choices. He could see the tiny windows of opportunity opening and closing in seconds. A single wrong move could escalate into disaster. Yet, inaction wasn't an option. Too many lives depended on precision, timing, and nerves of steel. The hijackers grew more aggressive, their threats sharper, their patience thinning. Every heartbeat felt like a drum signaling the approach of something inevitable. The plane seemed to hang in suspense, the air electric with fear and anticipation. Mark clenched his fists, eyes steely, as the moment of truth edged closer. The next seconds could change everything, but who would strike first, and would it be too late? Just as Mark prepared to make his move, a sudden jolt rocked the plane. The hijackers lost their balance for a split second, giving Mark a brief window but before he could act. A new complication arose. A hidden passenger, previously unnoticed in the back of the cabin, suddenly stood up. Their movements were calm, deliberate, and there was an intensity in their gaze that mirrored Mark's own. Whispers of confusion rippled through the passengers, some craning their necks to see who this mysterious figure was. The hijackers, now on edge, barked orders and tightened their grip on the cabin, clearly unnerved by the unexpected presence. Mark realized instantly that this person could be an Alor, another threat entirely. Every instinct screamed that nothing in this situation was straightforward, and the stakes had just doubled. Meanwhile, the captain's voice over the intercom grew more urgent, warning of turbulence ahead and trying to maintain a fragile sense of control. Panic was spreading faster than ever, and passengers clung to each other, their fear mixing with rising confusion over the sudden turn of events. Mark's mind raced. The situation had become exponentially more dangerous, the odds of survival shifting with every heartbeat. As the plane cut through the clouds, the tension in the cabin reached a fever pitch, and one truth became clear: nothing would be resolved easily, and the next move could change everything or cost lives. The cabin erupted into chaos in a split second. Mark and the mysterious passenger locked eyes, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Without a word, they moved with precision, neutralizing the hijackers in a flurry of controlled, decisive action. Shouts echoed. Passengers ducked for cover, and within moments, the immediate threat was subdued. Relief washed over the cabin, though fear still lingered in trembling hands and wide eyes. Mark finally spoke, his voice calm but firm, reassuring the passengers that the danger had passed. The mysterious passenger revealed herself as an air marshal, explaining that she had been tracking the hijackers on intelligence reports prior to the flight. Their combined experience and quick thinking had prevented what could have been a catastrophe. The plane, still soaring high above the clouds, felt like it had survived a storm that no one could have predicted. Just as passengers began to exhale in relief, the captain's voice came over the intercom with an urgent update. Radar had detected a second aircraft approaching, seemingly on an intercept course. The cabin fell silent again, tension snapping back like a drawn wire. Mark and the air marshal exchanged a look, realizing that the ordeal wasn't over. What they had faced inside the cabin might have been just the beginning. The plane's fate hung in balance once more, and the next moments would demand courage, strategy, and nerves sharper than steel. The approaching aircraft turned out to be a routine military escort. Alerted by the air marshal's pre-flight coordination, relief swept through the cabin as the tension that had gripped everyone for hours began to ease. Passengers slowly emerged from their seats, hugging loved ones, wiping tears, and murmuring words of gratitude to Mark and the air marshal. The quiet combat pilot, once invisible among the crowd, was now recognized as the hero who had saved countless lives. The young mother whispered her thanks, clutching her child tighter, while the elderly man nodded at Mark, a silent acknowledgement of courage and calm under pressure. Flight attendants, exhausted but proud, began checking on every passenger, their professionalism a steady reminder that order could return even after chaos. Mark leaned back in his seat, letting himself finally breathe, reflecting on the intensity of what had just passed. The ordeal had reminded everyone on board that courage often comes from the most unexpected places, and that ordinary people can rise to extraordinary challenges when the moment demands it. As the plane touched down safely, the passengers disembarked with stories they would never forget, inspired by bravery, quick thinking, and teamwork. Even as the world resumed its usual pace outside, the memory of that flight hand, the quiet hero who had saved it, would linger in hearts long after No. 6.